Formula One is the most technically advanced motorsport on the planet. And with that comes a price tag that would make most people's heads spin. So how much does a Formula One team actually spend in a season? The honest answer is more than they'll ever officially admit. Because in Formula One, there are two budgets. The one the rules say they can spend, and the one that quietly funds everything else. Let's pull back the curtain. For 2021, Formula One had no spending limit at all. Teams could spend whatever they wanted, and the richest ones did. Mercedes, Ferrari, and Red Bull were reportedly burning through $400 to $500 million a year. Meanwhile, smaller outfits like Haas or Williams were trying to survive on a fraction of that. The gap wasn't just financial, it was showing up every single lap, every single race. Something had to change. In 2021, Formula One introduced something called the cost cap, a hard limit on how much teams can spend on their cars each year. It was a landmark moment for the sport. For the first time, a billionaire's checkbook couldn't just buy championships outright. The cap started at $145 million in 2021. It was cut to $140 million in 2022. And reduced again to $135 million for 2023, where it stayed through 2024 and 2025. Though in practice, with inflation adjustments and extra allowances for races beyond 21 on the calendar, teams were operating closer to $150 to $160 million. Now here's where it gets interesting. We are in 2026 and everything has just changed. The cost cap has jumped to $250 million. That sounds like a massive increase, and in headline terms it is. But the FIA is insistent that this is not simply teams being handed a bigger wallet. The reason it looks so high is that a lot of costs that used to sit outside the cap have now been pulled inside it. Annual depreciation on equipment, the way staff time is allocated, how certain infrastructure costs are treated, all of it has been restructured. In reality, what teams can actually spend on making their Formula One car faster hasn't increased nearly as dramatically as that headline number suggests. But what does the cap actually cover? Everything that directly affects how fast the Formula One car goes. That means design and aerodynamic development, the physical manufacturing of every single part on the car, from the carbon fiber chassis right down to the wheel nuts, wind tunnel testing, simulator time, computational fluid dynamics runs, and the salaries of most of the team's engineers and mechanics. If it touches lap time, it's in the cap. But the list of what isn't covered is just as revealing. Driver salaries sit entirely outside the cap. A top Formula One driver can earn $50 million or more in a single season, and that doesn't count for anything against the spending limit. The three highest paid staff members at each team, usually the team principal, the technical director, and a senior executive, are also exempt. Their pay can run into the tens of millions, and none of it touches the cap. Then there's travel. Formula One races across 24 venues and 5 continents in a single year. Moving a Formula One team, cars, spare parts, garage infrastructure, hospitality suites, all the equipment costs between $8 and $20 million per season in logistics alone, depending on the team. Air freight for flyaway races is the biggest driver of that cost. DHL, Formula One official logistics partner, estimates that up to 1,200 metric tons of equipment move per race event. Each team ships roughly 50 tons of cargo per Grand Prix. That's the equivalent weight of 8 elephants every single race weekend across every continent on Earth. None of that freight spin counts against the cap. Hospitality is another world entirely. The paddock at a Formula One Grand Prix isn't just garages and pit lanes. It's a fully functioning event space with multi-level hospitality suites that can span over 1,000 square meters. Red Bull's hospitality structure alone reportedly takes 25 people around 32 hours to build at each venue. These structures host sponsors, VIPs, guests of honor, and media. The entire cost of running them, construction, staffing, catering, sits outside the cap. And then there's the engine. The Formula One power unit is the most complex racing engine ever built. It combines an internal combustion engine, 2 electric motor generator units, and a sophisticated energy recovery system, all working together at the same time. It is a piece of engineering that no single road car comes close to. And it operates under its own completely separate cost cap. Power unit manufacturers, Mercedes, Ferrari, Honda, Red Bull powertrains, and now Audi in 2026, had a spending limit of $95 million per year between 2022 and 2025. For 2026, with entirely new power unit regulations requiring a significant step in electric power delivery, that engine cap has risen to $190 million. Teams that buy their engines rather than build them pay tens of millions per season for the privilege, and that too sits outside the main cap. But what does all of this add up to? Take a front-running Formula One team. They'll hit the full $215 million cap on the car side. Add a driver pairing that costs 50 to 100 million in combined salaries. Add a team principal and senior staff package worth tens of millions more. Add freight and logistics, hospitality, travel, marketing, and the legal and HR infrastructure needed to run a global operation. Analysts consistently place the biggest operations in Formula One at well above $300 million in total annual spend, and that's a conservative estimate. If this is the kind of content you're into, subscribe. More breakdowns are coming. Not every team is spending at that level. Grid breaks into roughly 3 tiers. At the top, you have the giants, the teams that hit the cap on the car and stack hundreds of millions more on top through driver pay, manufacturer backing, and commercial infrastructure. These are your 300 million plus operations. In the middle sits what fans call the midfield. These teams now run remarkably close to the cap on car development, something that simply wasn't possible a decade ago, and their total spend likely sits in the low to mid 200s. Cap has genuinely helped level this part of the grid. And then there are the smaller independent teams. Before the cap, some of these operations were fighting just to fund a season at all. The cap didn't make them rich, but it gave them a ceiling they could actually compete beneath. Their total spend sits closer to the bottom of the 200 million range. Now what happens if a team goes over? The FIA's cost cap administration reviews every team's financial documents each year. Teams submit hundreds of pages of accounting records by March the 31st. The FIA then spends months, sometimes most of the year, reviewing them. If a team overspends by less than 5% of the cap, that's classified as a minor breach. Above 5% is a material breach, and the consequences can be severe: fines, points deductions, restrictions on aerodynamic testing time, and in extreme cases, exclusion from the championship altogether. System has already been tested. In 2021, its very first year, Red Bull Racing was found to have exceeded the cap by 1.6%. The dollar amount was small, just over $2 million, partly due to errors in how catering costs and tax credits were handled. But the FIA handed down a $7 million fine and a 10% reduction in wind tunnel testing time. Red Bull went on to win 21 of 22 races the following season, so the penalties on track impact was debatable. But the precedent was set, the rules have teeth. Since then, all 10 teams and all power unit manufacturers have been found compliant for the 2023 and 2024 seasons, though Aston Martin picked up a procedural paperwork breach in 2024 and resolved it quietly. Now we are in 2026 and the financial landscape has shifted again. This isn't just a new cap number, it's an entirely new era. New technical regulations mean new Formula One cars with a different aerodynamic philosophy. New power units with significantly higher electric output. Sustainable fuel mandates. And 2 new teams on the grid, Audi taking over what was the Sauber operation and Cadillac, backed by General Motors, joining as the 11th team. To protect the existing teams from prize money dilution, Cadillac had to pay an anti-dilution fee estimated at close to $350 million just for the right to compete. That's before building a single car. But what does it all mean for where the money goes in 2026? More of it is going into power units than ever before. More of it is going into understanding a new aerodynamic rule set from scratch. And some teams will have the resources to throw everything at this reset, while others will have to be ruthlessly efficient about every dollar they spend. Williams team principal James Vowles summed it up plainly when he said his team would need to be creative to stay competitive in 2026, not because of a lack of willpower, but because of available resources. Yet, despite all of this spending, Formula One teams are no longer the money pits they once were. For most of their history, Formula One teams hemorrhaged money. They existed because billionaires loved the sport or manufacturers wanted the marketing exposure. Very few turned a profit. That has changed dramatically. In September 2025, McLaren sold a partial stake that valued the entire team at $4.1 billion. All 11 teams on the 2026 grid have a combined estimated value of around $36 billion. Liberty Media, which owns Formula One, distributed a record $1.4 billion in prize money to teams across the 2025 season. The sport generates around $4.15 billion in total team revenue annually. Sponsors queue up. Title partnerships from companies like Oracle and Petronas regularly run to $50 million or more per season. Drive to Survive brought in an entirely new generation of fans who then bought tickets, merchandise, and streaming subscriptions. Commercial machine is bigger than it has ever been. So here is the honest answer to the question. Officially in 2026, a Formula One team can spend $215 million on their car. In reality, once you factor in drivers, leadership, travel, freight, hospitality, engines, marketing, and the commercial infrastructure needed to operate as a global franchise, the biggest teams are spending north of $300 million a season. Maybe significantly north. The arms race hasn't ended. It's just been rerouted. Because in Formula One, finding the edge within the rules is the sport itself, whether that's on the track, in the wind tunnel, or deep inside a set of financial regulations that run to 52 pages. Checkered flag falls on Sunday. Spending never really stops.